welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling, in this case for season 2. It's a pro wrestling TV show from any randomly chosen time period, territory, promotion from around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Some 33 episodes in here if you're listening to in linear fashion to season 2 of this podcast. And we have run the gamut from the US, Japan, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. We even got into the early part of the 2010s. And boy, oh boy, here on the season finale of Wrestling at Random Season 2, I am so excited about what the randomizer pulled for us, because unlike early in the season where it pulled a 1987 episode of the territory we're about to talk about, here we get world-class championship wrestling pretty close to in the heart and in the height of their powers in early 1985 world-class TV. I'm fired up, Jeremy. This episode is from only a month or two after I moved away as a very young child from Louisiana, where, as I've mentioned in previous episodes of this podcast, we got 2 wrestling programs, Mid-South and World Class. So this is pretty close to exactly what I was watching as a very, very young child here, early 85 World Class.
The way the show's been working is we take all of the wrestling content that's available from streaming services across the internet. We dump it into the randomizer. We fire up the randomizer, and you mentioned it pulled 1987 early. It's had a stretch where the randomizer has pulled the dying days of territories and shows that are towards the end of a promotion's life. This one is not that. So the randomizer giveth and it taketh away, and it's given us really some of the height of world class, and we'll get into it in a minute. But I did want to remind everybody that not only do we have this free feed that you're subscribed to right now with content every single week, as we head into the season break between seasons 2 and 3, we also offer bonus content. There's a bonus feed where there's brand new shows that if you're not a subscriber, you haven't heard at all. There's hours of additional content where we review things that didn't fit into the season 2 format of weekly television. It didn't fit into the season 1 format of major events and pay-per-views. That junk drawer of weird things and other random stuff, that is over at the Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. You can sign up right there, get yourself hours and hours of free content right now, and that content will continue to come every single week, even during our season hiatus.
Yes, that's exactly right. The paid feed over at Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, as you mentioned, Jeremy, or via Apple Podcasts, the bonus audio option there as well. Either one of those paid feeds where you can support the program, you will get new episodes each and every week during this relatively brief season break. And as you said, when you subscribe, you instantaneously have access to the entire paid bonus feed back catalog in that first month of you subscribing or supporting. And right there's pretty much an entire extra season's worth of shows if you've never subscribed. So have no fear. You'll have plenty of audio during the season break, whether you are a continuing subscriber to the bonus feed, and you will be getting new episodes still there every week. And especially if you're someone who has never subscribed, my God, you can go there and you have 2, 3, 4 episodes a week to get you through the break.
You will have so much value for your money. Your $5 will get you hours and hours of content for the month. Unbelievable. Best time to subscribe is right now. And if you are a new listener, we know we've seen a lot of new folks jumping on here in the last few weeks. Don't worry. the entire back catalog of this podcast, that's evergreen content. It's just as new as the day it came out. So go back during this break. We're going to give you some time to catch up. Maybe episodes you missed, maybe episodes you skipped. Now's the time. You can go back, and there's something on every episode for you. So go back and catch up on the back catalog of this podcast. So enjoy that.
What you're saying without saying it, Jeremy, you're speaking directly to the, I believe it's 18 people going back all the way to season 1 who have still only listened to part 2 of the WrestleMania. Which WrestleMania was
WrestleMania 19, and
yes.
Yeah, I'm talking directly to those people. There's more people that downloaded part 2 of WrestleMania 19's episode than they did of part 1 of the episode, which is absolutely appalling. We talk about Limp Bizkit in both episodes. Don't miss it.
The World Wrestling Federation's favorite band, Limp Bizkit.
That was 2003. Now we're going to talk about 1985. So let's go back. World Class Championship Wrestling. This is the Dallas territory, 1985. The episode we're going to review is from February 16th of 1985. So if you're looking up this episode in your favorite streaming service to go check it out, February 16th, 1985. A little history. If you go back to the previous episodes that we have here, I give you the whole history of World Class Championship Wrestling, the territory. You can go all the way to the Big Time Wrestling episode that we did in season 1 to hear all about the history of the promotion, how it went from big time.
Is it Big Reunion Arena show, I think it was, from 1983?
Yes, and so you can hear how it went from that to World Class Championship Wrestling. All of that's in the back catalog. But here, this show, obviously, it's 1985, so we're going to feature the Von Erichs, and we see Kerry Von Erich in the main event defending the Texas Championship. Now, if Kerry Von Erich...
He's defending the American title.
The American title, I'm sorry. So he's defending the American title in the main event. We'll get to that as we recap the show. Kerry Von Erich's father, Fritz Von Erich, he was a wrestling superstar in the 60s. Fritz was running the Dallas territory for the NWA. He renamed that territory to World Class Championship Wrestling, got national syndication in 1981, and the show quickly was seen as state-of-the-art production-wise for pro wrestling. They were the first to use rock music for entrance themes. Fritz's sons, the Von Erich boys, would become the stars of the promotion, including Kerry Von Erich, who would rival Hulk Hogan as one of the most popular wrestlers in this early 80s period.
He was, by the way, my Hulk Hogan as a kid. Kerry Von Erich was my wrestling hero as like a 3 and 4-year-old. And again, going back to that time period, yes, WWF was in the process of going national, and Hulk Hogan was, the most beloved babyface. But depending on where you were in the country, Kerry Von Erich was your Hulk Hogan, or Dusty Rhodes was your Hulk Hogan. It's a completely different situation, or it was a completely different situation than it is now, where, pretty much everything is, across the board. There's really no geographic thing where, like Roman Reigns is a big star in Kansas City, but in Dallas, nobody knows who he is. Totally different world back in 85.
No, that's a great point, because Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter writes that the Von Erichs were obviously the kings of Texas. The first WrestleMania in 1985. The first WrestleMania completely rocked the nation, went nationwide. This was a big deal for the World Wrestling Federation. That show died in Dallas. Saturday night's main events of the WWF at the time, a ratings success across the country on NBC, was destroyed head-to-head by World Class Championship Wrestling on their local television show in the Dallas market.
Wow. And it's surprising, but not. I guess you'd say it's surprising only because, we've talked about, just a few years later, World Class, AWA, all these other big time territories that were on death's door and were not doing great crowds or great ratings at all. But still here in 1985, the pull of the Von Erichs, the World Class name, the Sportatorium, all of it was enough to, for a short period of time at least, stave off WWF's dominance, I should say, back then.
That's right. Dallas fans, they had the long-awaited dream that had been teased for 2 years for most fans, but nearly 2 decades for the older fans that followed Fritz's career. They were all looking forward to a Von Erich finally winning the NWA World Heavyweight title, and that took place on May 6th, 1984. So less than a year before the show we're about to review. Ric Flair and Kerry Von Erich wrestled for that title. Kerry Von Erich winning the heavyweight title. This was just a few miles down the road, okay, from Texas Stadium where this match happened. Just a few miles down the road, the NBA's Dallas Mavericks were in a do-or-die playoff game with the legendary Lakers that featured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson. They were in a game. This was such a huge playoff game, but it shocked the local sports community because that game didn't sell out in Dallas.
Wow.
32,123 fans that same night were at Texas Stadium to see Kerry Von Erich become the champion. That's how popular they were at this point in 1985. Of course, the story of World Class unfortunately ends with tragedy. The death of the Von Erich boys, David Von Erich in February of 84. Mike Von Erich got toxic shock syndrome in 85. He committed suicide in 87. The dynasty pretty well ended in April of 87 with the death of Fritz's fifth son, Michael. And he's the third to die. He was at the age of 23 by suicide. Carrie, however, at this point, he had charisma, the physique. He was rich. He was riding high until he was crippled in an injury in a motorcycle accident right before, it was before Mike's suicide. He lost a foot in that accident. And eventually, World Class went out of business, ending with Kerry Von Erich having little money left to his name. Because he was broke, he hooked up with the biggest wrestling company in the world at that time in 1991. And that time it was WWF. So Kerry Von Erich joins as the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. And slowly, the reality that he wasn't what he once was, he moved from superstar to preliminary status. His recreational drug problems continued. Soon, the drugs that created his physique were banned by the WWF as well, causing his muscles to shrink to normality. Eventually, he lost that job as well. The money went with it. He had trouble with the IRS. By February of 1993, well, February 17th, 1993 to be exact, he was indicted on cocaine possession charges. He was already serving 10 years probation for forging drug prescriptions during a time about 1 year earlier when he was supposed to be attending rehab. The odds were very good that his probation would be revoked and he would be sent to prison. The morning of that indictment, Kerry shot himself in the heart, and that was another Von Erich tragedy. So unbelievable, the story of World Class. It continues. We're going to talk about some other guys throughout this show. They also ended in tragedy as well. So it's crazy how cursed, is that the term to use?
Yeah,
was World Class.
I mean, cursed. I think World Class exploding in popularity when it did at a time where recreational hard drug use was exploding and people didn't fully realize the ramifications of some of those hard drugs. And just, it all came together for, we talk about, and people talk about wrestler deaths and just the scene in wrestling in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s and how many wrestlers died, but there's no promotion. I don't think there's any promotion that exemplifies that more, unfortunately, than World Class. Here in 1985, though, outside of the passing of David Von Erich 1 year earlier, things are still going on. They're riding high.
This is the popularity is so high. You could tell the production is so slick.
It blows away every other mid 80s product that we've reviewed in season 2 of this podcast, every other TV show, including the WWF, by a significant margin. The quality of film, the super slow-mo replays are on another level. The camera work,
placement,
the fact you have cameras up on the apron shooting the action, which I found interesting when the show closed, that we saw Keith Mitchell was the director of this, because years later in WCW, that would be something they would do as well, having the cameras up on the apron. I think we even talked about that on that recent 1997 episode or 1996 episode of WCW Monday Nitro that we reviewed. But just everything about this just screamed big league wrestling. And then as the show starts, and we'll get into it, the crowd here, when you compare this is the Sportatorium, the Sportatorium that in 1987 was like a mausoleum, just empty, quiet, only a couple hundred people there. Here it is teeming with life. It is absolutely jam-packed full, every seat filled. In certain camera shots, you can see people lining the back walls of the building, standing up watching the show. I would make the argument that out of the 30 plus episodes we've done here in season 2, there is no promotion that comes off hotter than World Class here in February of 85.
Absolutely. And the show opens with the World Class theme song. Adam, yes. Did that take you right back to your childhood hearing that theme song?
More than you could possibly believe. And it made me very happy, because this was taking me back to a very similar time period, as we talked about, when World Class was hot. The other thing that I noted here is that every promotion in the mid 80s that was trying to go national, their open was built around images of Earth from space.
The globe. Yes.
It was Earth. We saw stars in the background and Earth to imply that we are, in fact, worldwide here. This is not just a territory. And we are told that, among other things on this show, the main event will be Kerry Von Erich versus Chris Adams. I guess you can't call him a gentleman now after the heel turn that he's undertaken, which we'll get to later on, for the American heavyweight title, which was the main, the top title in the territory, outside of everyone going after the NWA world title. But the top championship that was actually stationed in World Class was the American heavyweight title. We should also note that we have Bill Mercer here on the call, which is great. Love me some Bill Mercer. He has a velvet background as he's talking, laying out the card. And then we have a graphic running down the card, but each match is up for approximately a nanosecond. So if you didn't catch him saying what the matches were earlier, you're definitely not going to get it from this graphic.
No, I felt like they were charged by the minute that they were showing a graphic. Get that off. We're paying for that. Get it down. So the show opens after Bill Mercer runs down some of the card. We see a clip from a previous show where Billy Haynes and Sunshine are interviewed, and
they're interviewed by our guy, Mark Lowrance.
Mark Lowrance. We'll see him all over this show today.
The tallest, skinniest, oldest young man you've ever seen. Love him interviewing people. And this is Billy Haynes, who would go on to be known as Billy Jack Haynes in the WWF shortly thereafter, as you said, with Sunshine. It's a very generic promo from the jacked up Billy Jack Haynes, Billy Haynes here, who's trying to somehow convince us that he's just a normal guy.
Sure.
Even though he's like 6'3", 280 pounds of chiseled granite. He says he's not better than anyone else. He says he'll challenge the TV title when the time comes. And then here comes, to interrupt him, a guy who exemplifies what we've talked about through both seasons of this podcast when we do territory-based shows. The mid-card, sleazy territory heel. It's Rip Oliver, and he fits all of this to a T. He kind of looks like a slightly less flamboyant Michael P.S. Hayes, is the way I would describe him physically.
Yeah, Rip Oliver interrupts them. Haynes takes a swing at Oliver, and Oliver nails Haynes, who bumps back, knocking Sunshine down. We see that Oliver had a weapon of some kind in his hand.
Yeah, he reaches down, grabs a weapon, and like almost does like a Ivan Putski style Polish hammer with whatever this weapon is, takes out both of them. And this is the first point where I note, man, World Class had great production values, because the camera shot, and the camera was in the ring for this, the camera shot was perfect to capture Billy Haynes going down and Sunshine going down just like a tree in the forest from this shot.
Well, and him loading up the weapon, and he could make a I'm a heel face to the camera.
Yes.
Rip Oliver with a good facial while he's using this weapon. Camera's right there to capture all of it. Oliver puts the boots to Billy Haynes. He picks him up and looks like he's going to hit like a shoulder breaker, but instead like puts a knee into the upper back of Haynes.
It was a shoulder breaker that went awry. This was
did.
Definitely. Shoulder breaker was his move. He was called the Crippler. He injured guys with this. Billy Haynes is bleeding profusely at this point after a second shoulder breaker.
This one looked like a shoulder breaker this time. Yes.
Kevin and Mike Von Erich come out to run off Rip Oliver. We then go back live to the desk, and Bill Mercer says that Haynes has a shoulder injury and a severely lacerated thumb.
And he will be
out. I have thoughts and a theory as to how this occurred, because it is impossible to get a severely lacerated thumb from any of the actual attack that took place here from Rip Oliver. I will bet you $100 that Billy Haynes severely lacerated his thumb while attempting to blade after getting hit with the object.
This totally makes sense. And because he was bleeding a lot, and yes, that would be how it happened. He is out for an indefinite amount of time. Mark Lawrence is your ring announcer.
Well, before he is, we have a graphic before we go to commercial that says the handsome half-breed versus Tim Horner.
Oh, yes, and we get the announcement from Mark Lawrence from the aristocratic suburb of Highland Park, the Texas heavyweight champion, Gino Hernandez.
No, Mark Lawrence was even more conversational there, because he said, Gino Hernandez, of course, the current holder of the Texas heavyweight title.
Yes, he had a very conversational style for his introductions.
Yes. His opponent is Tim Horner, who, if you are a subscriber of the paid bonus content, you will remember Tim Horner from some 6 years later, teaming with the Z-Man and Brian Pillman at the WCW New Japan Super Show, as I said, in 1991. And I am going to make a guess here that the crowd will not laugh at the high-flying attempts from Tim Horner in the same way that they did at the Tokyo Dome some 6 years later.
Yeah, to Gino Hernandez here. This is the first Gino Hernandez appearance we have on this podcast over all of the 80-plus episodes here. We have not had a Gino Hernandez match. To learn all about Gino Hernandez and his death and his life, watch the great documentary they did as part of the Dark Side of the Ring series. That was phenomenal.
There's several. If you also the WWE produced Von Erich World Class documentary is okay but not great. There is a different one that actually was produced, and really they talked to everybody that was involved with the promotion that was still alive. I do not recall the name of it offhand. I have the DVD.
I have the DVD somewhere.
Yeah. But I would make
Heroes of World Class was what it was called. Yes.
Heroes of World Class it's heartbreaking, especially for somebody like me who grew up as a kid watching it. But I'd make the argument it's one of the probably top 2 or 3 wrestling documentaries that I've seen. So that you can definitely find out more about Gino Hernandez and his whole story, because there's a lot there you can find out through that as well.
At 28 years old, the company's top heel, he dies of a cocaine overdose on February 2nd, 1986. So less than a year here from this episode.
The other thing, as I was watching this, and I hadn't seen much of Gino Hernandez in a long time. I hadn't gone back and watched old World Class in quite a while. I was not prepared for how much the Gino Hernandez character, how much MJF cribs from Gino Hernandez.
Sure. No, that's a good comp.
Even just the fact of the age as well, on top of everything else, and the rich kid, all of it. The one thing about Gino Hernandez here, my God, the visual presentation, I think it's all just part of why you're supposed to hate him. But he does not have the best body. He's not like a fat wrestler, but he's not jacked or anything, particularly compared to some of the other guys on this show. But he has no knee pads, no elbow pads, no wrist tape. It's tremendous.
Gino teases a handshake, but then just walks away. Hip toss, and then Gino celebrates, and I'm like, this guy's great. Just
Yes.
Horner tries a quick roll up. They grapple, trading holds. They're in a stalemate. Gino elbows his way out of a hammerlock, hits another elbow, and then celebrates some more. I am falling in love with Gino Hernandez quickly.
He's so great at getting this crowd riled up, and this crowd is so ready to be riled up. They came to this building wanting to hate heels, and Gino Hernandez is giving them every reason to. The other thought as I was watching Gino Hernandez, on top of just the human tragedy of a 28-year-old person dying, man, I feel like from a wrestling standpoint, we were really robbed of what old man Gino Hernandez would have been like. He would have been an incredible old man heel, because he was already great here at 28, but just, you think of him with 15, 20 more years of experience, it would have been amazing.
Horner tries a sunset flip, and then Horner just gets punched in the face by Gino.
Yes. Also, this is right around here is the first time of many times in this show where Bill Mercer tells us that the show is seen from Boston to Los Angeles and around the world.
Horner fights back with right hands. Gino at this point starts missing with wild haymakers. Just phenomenal. Gino's begging off. Horner charges in the corner. Hernandez moves. Hernandez with an elbow off the top rope, then a Russian leg sweep. Gino Hernandez gets the pin after the Russian leg sweep, and then he's screaming at the camera, "Where are the Von Erichs?"
Yes.
4 minutes, 19 seconds on the victory.
And again, the cameraman is in the ring. This is like UFC style as far as having the camera in the ring post-match, and Gino yelling towards the camera about the Von Erichs. Mark Lowrance tells us the exact time, which he does for each match. We should also note that Bill Mercer tells us during this match that Jim Cornette will be on the show next week to talk about how he was able to work with his mother, Mama Cornette, to sign Rip Oliver, who we saw earlier on in the show. And Rip Oliver will be the man that will team with the Midnight Express to go after the 6-man tag team championships, which were a thing here in World Class.
After commercial, we get the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, making their way through the crowd.
Well, hold on. It's Bobby Gentry here.
We'll get there in a second. Hold on. So the Fantastics come out. They're making their way through the crowd, and they proceed to hug every single fan before making their way into the ring.
We are not lying, and if you've heard us talk about World Class on previous episodes, we mentioned how one of the very unique things is how up close and personal the fans get up against the apron when the wrestlers are coming out to the ring, but particularly once the wrestlers are at the ringside area, the fans will crowd the apron, like literally be up against the apron. We've talked about before, fans standing on the edge of the ring to get autographs. Here, as you said, everybody in the Sportatorium is rushing to hug Tommy Rogers and Bobby Gentry here. And it's quite the visual, because you've got all these, these women, these children trying to hug these two guys who are coming out wearing short tights and long tail suit jackets.
Yes. So literally they hug every single person.
This goes on and on
this
and on.
This took forever, right?
We get a lot. We get Bill Mercer doing the world's first podcast as this is happening. He's talking, we're looking forward to the second annual David Von Erich Memorial Show. He talks about how it's very gratifying to have fans in Boston and Los Angeles, which at that point I did think about just 2 years later, and Mark Lowrance was telling us about the 2 affiliates that they still have and saying it over and over.
Right.
About,
I forgot about
Biloxi and Lake Okeechobee or whatever it was. Like, it was not Boston and Los Angeles. That's for sure.
That is correct.
This had much more of a, okay, you're actually national and worldwide effect than the other one did.
Yeah. So So we've got their opponents, Rip Oliver and Kelly Kaniski, the son of Gene Kaniski,
who's wearing a sweet Canada jacket. I'm assuming it's made by Roots, and it looks like it should have been like an Olympic warm-up jacket.
Rip Oliver's first push in a major territory was in 1980, working for New Japan Pro Wrestling as the Gestapo. He was only in world class. He was only in this territory for 6 months, if you can believe that. And finally, the Fantastics are in the ring. I was looking up Rip Oliver's career history while waiting for the Fantastics to get into the ring. And then the sweet Canada jacket comes off. The Fantastics, with their coats with the tails and their ties come off. And what the hell am I looking at? Every single one of these wrestlers are wearing short black trunks. Come on, this is unacceptable.
I made note of that. That I figured you would be upset.
Horrified.
While you were
four guys. Come on, how does that happen?
While you were talking about that, I looked up the whole Bobby Gentry situation, and it appears as though my childhood love of Bill Mercer was tinged by nostalgia rather than the conventional wisdom of how good or not good of an announcer he was, because apparently going back to the opening match or the opening segment, Billy Jack Haynes was called Billy Jack Haynes here too. Bill Mercer just shortened his name to
Billy Haynes.
Billy Haynes. And then also apparently I was just reading that at some point he would just call him Billy Hayes.
So
and that will play into, I'm sure you have your explanation coming up of why Bobby Fulton here was Bobby Gentry, which Bobby Gentry is a famous musician, right? Who I'm assuming Bill Mercer must have had quite the crush on.
No, because all I did,
Bobby Lee Gentry, retired American singer-songwriter, one of the first American artists to compose and produce her own material back in 1969.
Yeah, he keeps calling Bobby Fulton Bobby Gentry, so I literally had to pause the show and go look up the Fantastics to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. I'm like, no, it's Bobby Fulton, and this guy is telling me repeatedly, it's Bobby Gentry. I'm like,
well, what I was trying to figure out was this like a weird random substitution Fantastic?
No, it was Bobby Fulton. Like,
well,
I was looking right at him.
He looks a lot like Bobby Fulton, but this announcer, Bill Mercer, who I trusted as a child, is telling me every single time that it's Bobby Gentry. And so
yeah, I looked it up. I'm correct. Bill Mercer is incorrect. And
yes.
But I literally thought I was losing my mind. I had to stop the show and go look it up because I'm like, no, I swear to God, the Fantastics guy was Bobby Fulton. And I swear to God, it's that guy. And I had to go look it up.
One other fun fact on the Fantastics. Do you remember Tommy Rogers' short stint in ECW, I believe in 98?
Ooh,
he was a singles wrestler, and he is actually the guy, at least I don't know if he created it, but he's the guy who brought to the United States the move that he called the Tamikaze, which would go on to be called the Unprettier Christian.
Sure.
Little Guido would steal that move from Tommy Rogers and use it later in ECW. It's the Pulp Friction from Juice Robinson in New Japan. It was the Tamikaze from Tommy Rogers.
So the Fantastics start out quickly, working on Kaniski's arm, hip toss, arm drags, double team leg drops on the arm. Rip Oliver's in there with Fulton and
with Gentry.
Yeah, Rogers. He goes. Rogers in off the middle rope, elbow across the arm. And
that's the move of the night, by the way.
They're just working over the arm of Oliver.
Middle rope elbow smashes to the arm happen so many times in this match. We saw one in the previous match. That is the move of the evening. Couple quick notes here from the beginning of the match. Apparently, in 1985 in Dallas, nobody knew that there were cities or provinces in Canada, because Kelly Kaniski is introduced as just being from Canada, as though it's a small nondescript country. I also love how Bill Mercer here starts talking about how Eddie and Lorraine Mitchell in Boston really love world-class wrestling.
It's all fantastics to start this match. Drop kick by Rogers, arm drag by Fulton. Oliver finally gets some offense with a poke to the eye and makes the tag to Kaniski.
Which I'm not a fan of, because Rip Oliver is great here. Kaniski is pretty nondescript. I want more of Rip Oliver. I my exposure to him was fairly limited, but he's selling, he's bumping like crazy for these guys. It's also at this point that I note that Tommy Rogers is unequivocally the better of the two Fantastics.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did
Fulton,
you see that weird, terrible, like arm version of a spinning leg lock?
I was just about to write it down. I was just about to mention. So Fulton has Kaniski and does a spinning wrist lock, like a spinning toe hold to the wrist.
In theory, this could be really cool. In practice, it looked as though Chubby Checker was in the arena and he was doing the twist.
Yeah, more quick tags by the Fantastics. Still working on the arm of Kaniski. Kaniski holds Fulton, which allows Oliver to come in off the top with a punch. With
a hard punch off the top rope. This should have been the finish.
But no, Fulton fights back. He hits a solid drop kick, staying on Oliver. Rogers is back in. He monkey flips Oliver out of the corner. Fulton in with, and he does a monkey flip out of the other corner on Oliver as well. Camel clutch. And Oliver does that cool counter to the camel clutch where you walk the other man's legs over one step at a time.
He basically crab walks him over using his arms to walk the guy, his opponent's legs to get to the corner. It was kind of a weird setup for this, though, in that like Tommy Rogers is the baby face and he's got Rip Oliver in the camel clutch and he's pointing him towards his corner, toward the heel corner, and he's taunting him. It was just a weird setup, but still a cool spot. And yeah, I just thought Rip Oliver was awesome at all the little things in this match that we talk about so often.
Yeah, he rams him into the corner, tags Kaniski in. He beats on Rogers, then goes to his corner to tag Oliver. But Oliver pulls his hand away and says, "No, keep going."
Yeah, he was letting the young guy earn his stripes here. At this point, as we have the crowd chanting, "Go, Tommy, go!" we get a whole bunch of bear hugs. Kaniski has a big elevated bear hug that Gorilla Monsoon would be proud of. And then he walks him to the corner and makes the tag so Rip can then come in with a big clubbing forearm and then put an elevated bear hug of his own on. And then he walks Rogers back to the corner and tags Kaniski in right away. This match is so weird because we're 5-6 minutes in, and up to this point, it had been the Fantastics doing that like first 90 seconds of a Rockers match over and over and over again. And then the heels get the advantage and they start doing fast tags too. It's just an odd match.
Fast tags between bear hugs.
Yes.
The bear hug by Kaniski. Oliver comes off the middle rope with a shot to the back of Rogers while he's in the bear hug.
Is there like a Bill Watts no top rope roll here sneaking into world class somehow?
Rogers gets a sunset flip, but is unable to tag another bear hug by, and then Oliver with a front face lock this time, not a bear hug. Rogers pushes him towards his corner slowly. He got close, but couldn't make the tag. So this is the longest heat of the entire match here.
It's not Marty Jannetty in AWA 87, thankfully, because as nondescript as this match is, like it's just your garden variety Southern tag formula, but it is so much fun because this jam-packed sportatorium is nuclear hot for everything that's happening here.
He reverses the whip of Rogers, hits a back elbow, and finally makes the hot tag to Bobby Fulton. Backdrop, drop kick. He's beating up both men. They run into each other. Double drop kick by the Fantastics.
They almost legit take the ref out in this double noggin knocker. We get Irish whips from either corner, and the ref is not prepared for this, and we almost have a legitimate ref bump.
Thank goodness it wasn't Bronco Lubitsch. That would have been devastating. They We get double drop kicks on Oliver. He rolls out to the floor. Fulton off the ropes, nails Kaniski. He hits the ropes, and this time Oliver from the outside trips Fulton. Kaniski climbs on top, but Rogers makes the save. All 4 men in the ring, and then we just hear the bell. What? What happened here? The Fantastics beat up everyone, another double drop kick, and then it's announced that it's a double disqualification. Extremely lame. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, I don't understand why this was a double disqualification. I don't understand why they went 12 or 13 minutes if this was going to be the finish. I don't know why you couldn't just beat Kaniski and give the Fantastics a win. Like it was one of those where they were disqualified for wrestling too hard, which is never a good reason. Like I said, frustrating too, because the crowd was so into this that it was making a pretty bland match actually really exciting to watch. And I was looking forward to seeing the Fantastics win and the crowd go crazy. Maybe a few women and children get some more hugs as they left the ring. We got none of that. Instead, we got a commercial with a super slow-mo of the disqualification-inducing double drop kick. And then we come back. We're told by Bill Mercer that next week it will be Mike Von Erich and Brian Adias taking on the Midnight Express. Babyface Brian Adias. My God, if you don't know about that man and our thoughts on him, stop the podcast right now. We give you permission. Go and listen to the 1987 World Class show we did earlier on in this season. Hear about Brian Adias, our thoughts on his look, our thoughts on how he got his job in the promotion, and learn about the 4 old women that hated Brian Adias.
Yeah, so Kerry Von Erich and the aforementioned Brian Adias are interviewed. Kerry is so happy that Brian is home. They were legit. He's a legit friend, a boyhood friend of the Von Erichs. That's why he's here.
Since the first grade, as Kerry Von Erich says here in this promo. And it feels like they were kind of trying to create, even though there's a legit story, obviously they were friends. It's like they're trying to create another, mega star Von Erich by proxy here with Brian Adias. This is not a great promo from Kerry Von Erich, but it doesn't matter because he's so damn earnest in it that you just love the guy, even though what he's saying doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However,
was it the part where he said that Brian Adias was wrestling all over the country? He was wrestling top talent. I don't believe this for a second.
Yeah, that seems like a tall tale. However, he immediately seemed like a better promo. Kerry Von Erich did. The second that Brian Adias opened his mouth, he started talking, going all across the country, all around the world. And this is a direct quote. He says, "I've got a lot of bridge under the water." I believe he meant to say, "I've got a lot of water under the bridge." He would actually be accurate in talking on his level of talent and ability with his initial description, but I don't think that's what he was trying to say.
They're interrupted by Sunshine. She talks about Billy Haynes being put out by Rip Oliver, and then Brian Adias says that he's on her side.
He hits on her quite a bit as well. Says anytime you need some help, you can count on us. My description of Kerry Von Erich here, and this, again, pains me to say this because he was my childhood hero when it comes to wrestling, but it was such a weird juxtaposition. He was like a coked up Andy Griffith or something because he was almost incoherent, almost nonsensical, but he came across still as such a likable, aw shucks guy. Just such a weird combination that I don't think I've ever seen in a promo before.
We didn't talk about it in the 1987 episode where Brian Adias, as a heel, was feuding with Kevin Von Erich in that feud, and they were trying to break the hand of Adias because he had the deadly Oriental tool punch. And
that was the only good spot on that entire show, if you recall. The attempt to break the hand with the hammer and the bell.
Correct. So the way that angle came about, which we didn't talk about on that show, was Kevin had passed out and nearly died in a Fort Worth ring, only to be saved by CPR from wrestler Tommy Rogers, who we saw in the previous match. Tommy Rogers gave CPR to Kevin in the ring, saved his life. And the angle was...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the angle was created off of that. His opponent, when he collapsed, was Brian Adias.
Wow.
So they had just recently turned him heel, and so they blamed this injury, this near tragedy on the Oriental Tool Punch that nearly killed his former best friend. Yeah.
So we legit almost lost the man who went on to be the only surviving Von Erich brother, Kevin Von Erich.
Yes. So that's that's a crazy story that ties Brian Adias and Tommy Rogers to the Von Erichs here.
But how does Bobby Gentry fit in?
Still making music.
Yeah, exactly.
It's main event time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this world-class main event features two of the greatest stars in all of professional wrestling. 60-minute time limit. First, presented by his manager, Gary Hart. From England, 235 pounds, the gentleman, Christopher Adams. His opponent tonight, defending the coveted American heavyweight title, from Benton County, 260 pounds, the modern-day warrior, Kerry Von Erich. Walker Lubitsch is the official. This is for the American Heavyweight Championship.
It is indeed, as Mark Lawrence pointed out, for the American Heavyweight Championship.
The American Heavyweight Championship, the challenger, the gentleman Chris Adams, with Gary Hart in a sweater.
Yes, a favorite of the podcast, and you're not lying. He's wearing an incredible sweater here, accompanying Chris Adams. He tells Chris Adams, tonight it's your night. And man, I believe anything Gary Hart says. So I put my money here on Chris Adams.
He's taking on the American champion, the American heavyweight champion, Carrie, Von Erich. And this crowd loves themselves some Carrie Von Erich. This guy's popular.
Oh, my God. Understatement of the almost 2 years that we've been doing this podcast, year and a half, 2 seasons. The crowd adores Kerry Von Erich. Everything about him. You've never seen anyone as over as Kerry Von Erich is here. Meanwhile, Chris Adams, who I remembered more as a babyface in World Class, he has a great heel sneer facial expression. I'm very excited for this again. Two of the guys that I remember most fondly from my time as a child watching World Class. And the thing I'll note, just as this match is about to get underway, Kerry Von Erich here, he while his promo may have been weird, he was having a good night in the ring. He is moving here in this match.
Adams, he tries punches, they're blocked. A kick, it's blocked when Kerry grabs his foot, but Adams hits an enziguri and Kerry is down and rolls out to the floor. That's how the match opens.
It was an awesome spot. It was almost like something out of a martial arts movie with the way the attempted strikes and blocks came through before Adams hit the enziguri. Very cool. Quick start. And like you said, knocks Kerry out to the floor. Adams goes out to chase him, and Kerry recovers enough to catch him with a few punches on the floor, but rolls back in the ring and is still feeling the effects of the enziguri.
Kerry wrestles him down with a front face lock. He shoots the half for a 1 count. Adams gets back to his feet, tries to ram Kerry into the corner, but he won't break the front face lock. Adams tries again and again. He won't let go. Adams reverses a suplex attempt, but Kerry floats over right back to the front face lock again. He transitions to a headlock, and Adams counters with a belly-to-back suplex.
And the crowd shrieks in terror. There's a few moments here. Actually, we'll get into the next sequence where Chris Adams hits an uppercut, throws Kerry Von Erich into the turnbuckles, and Kerry's selling here when he hits the buckle. He's almost Ricky Steamboat-like, which is not something you normally would say from Kerry Von Erich. He just everything he's doing here looks great. And again, that's coupled with the fact that he is physically at this point in his career like the archetype of, like a pro wrestler, just chiseled out of granite. I said that earlier about Billy Jack Haynes, but not accurate then when compared to Kerry Von Erich here. He just looks beyond impressive physically.
Adams takes Kerry down with a sleeper. Kerry fights to his feet, off the ropes, ducks a clothesline attempt by Adams, and Kerry hits a crossbody for a 2 count.
Well, you got one thing wrong, though. It's not the sleeper hold. It's the sleep hold, according to Bill Mercer.
Bill Mercer.
I forgot how much I loved that he called it the sleep hold. At this point, in the next sequence, as you said, you have that crossbody. Chris Adams then hits an uppercut. It sends Kerry Von Erich over the top rope to the floor. Kerry Von Erich is bumping like a madman in this match as we see Gary Hart lurking on the floor. Yeah,
this was a crazy bump. Adams throwing some great right hands and that uppercut that knocks Kerry up and over the top rope to the floor. Impressive spot here. Kerry gets back in, ducks a clothesline again, and puts on the abdominal stretch. Kerry then slaps on the stomach claw because he's exposed in the abdominal stretch.
Well, first he looks at it, he puts his hand out in front of his face and looks at it and it's like, I can use the claw here.
Well, first he's got his hand just down to his side and he makes it into the claw position. And just Kerry looking down at his hand, teasing just his hand in a claw position, got a huge reaction from the crowd.
Well, and it's just it's stuff like that is the payoff of literally generations of fans seeing Von Erich use the claw and win matches. Just even the slightest tease of that, and people are losing their minds like someone's doing a shooting star press to the floor.
Chris Adams regrouping with Gary Hart outside. He's throwing chairs in anger.
Yeah, he's throwing those wooden chairs. I expected Ming to appear and have one wrapped around his neck.
Back in the ring, Kerry misses a clothesline, and Adams tries a crossbody, but he misses, and he crashes and burns. Kerry goes for the claw, but Adams is blocking it, like 2 hands pushing away Kerry's one claw hand, like someone tries to stop a stabbing in a horror movie, right?
Yes, exactly. And the camera work here and the production, the direction was so great. This is going on for probably 30 to 45 seconds, but we get multiple camera shots, including one that's at basically mat level, looking directly, like from a side view, looking directly into the eyes of Chris Adams as he's looking up and just barely keeping Kerry from putting the claw on. Tremendous wrestling cinematography here.
They're too close to the ropes, and Chris Adams slid outside, but then he pops right back in and slaps on a headlock. Leapfrog and a drop kick by Kerry. Headlock takeover by Kerry, and Bill Mercer calls it a side mare move.
Yes. At this point, we get loud Kerry chants just from him doing this side mare move.
or a headlock takeover.
Yes, the side headlock takeover, as it's conventionally known, which again just shows you how popular Kerry Von Erich is here. It's not like he was in trouble and the crowd was rallying behind him.
No, he's in control. They're going nuts.
He had a side headlock takeover on, and the crowd is just going nuts because it's Kerry Von Erich doing things in front of them live and in color. He goes for a hip toss, misses an elbow drop as Bill Mercer, for some reason, calls Kerry Von Erich a world leader. I don't know.
After the missed elbow drop, Chris Adams gets into the mount position, starts raining down punches to the face of Kerry.
Ground and pound from Chris Adams. Fun fact, he would appear in the mid to late 90s in WCW. You probably saw him at some point on Nitro. In the late 90s, he had another run in WCW. It was only on WCW Saturday Night and Worldwide, I believe, where they leaned into his judo background and he actually wrestled wearing a gi and did judo stuff like crazy. Like he was just a judoka.
Drop kick to Kerry, then Adams catapults Kerry into the turnbuckles. Kerry reverses a whip and slaps on a sleeper.
Before that, Adams hits a nice headbutt to the stomach, a short headbutt to the stomach coming up. Very Lord Steven Regal-like.
Adams runs into the corner. He hits the buckles chest first, turns around and gets nailed by the classic discus punch from Kerry Von Erich. He covers Adams, but Gary Hart from the outside puts Chris Adams' foot on the bottom rope. Kerry then chases Gary Hart at ringside. As Kerry gets on the apron, about to get back in the ring, Adams hits him with his finisher, which is the super kick. Kerry then on the outside, he's climbing back onto the apron. As Adams has the referee distracted, Gary Hart nails Kerry in the head with his cowboy boot.
This is so much more entertaining than it even sounds, because it's Gary Hart getting up on the apron, looking like Gary Hart with still a little bit of hair on his head, by the way, wearing this amazing sweater, and he dramatically takes off his cowboy boot, wallops Kerry Von Erich on the top of the head. 1 billion stars for this spot.
Kerry then stumbles back into the ring, holding his head. Adams nails a perfect super kick, goes for the cover, and he gets the 3 count. History made. Gary Hart celebrating. Chris Adams has the belt. Gary Hart's yelling, "He did it!" 10 minutes, 30 seconds. We've got a new American heavyweight champion, and it's gentleman Chris Adams. I did not expect to see a title change here at all.
Rampage and hammers Kerry Von Erich. Gary Hart hammering Kerry Von Erich with his boot. There's a super kick. A super kick. Chris Adams, 1, 2, 3. Chris Adams and Gary Hart for the American Heavyweight Championship. Gary Hart interfering. Obviously interfering, but the referee blocked out. Did not see it. The referee was giving Kerry Von Erich an opportunity, pushing Chris Adams away, and there was the blow by Gary Hart, and Kerry Von Erich has lost the American Championship. And let's go down to Mark Lawrence.
In 10.5 minutes, Chris Adams is the new American Heavyweight Champion.
That's the decision, and there is a fall on Kerry Von Erich as Gary Hart.
Gary Hart screaming, "We got it! We got it!" Then Adams is announced champion and yells, "He did it!" Gary Hart yells it. The fans are throwing garbage in the ring. I'm like you. I was not expecting a title change here, but this was so much fun. Just a perfect 10.5 minutes of territory wrestling with a hated heel, with an even more hated manager, a beloved babyface. And I could do an entire podcast talking about Chris Adams' super kick.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody in wrestling did or does a super kick like him. It is a float super kick. He starts on one end of the ring, jumps in the air, and then with sort of jumps forward in the air with one foot and then switches with the other foot and hits the super kick. It's almost like a bicycle kick or a pump kick, but super kick style. I am shocked that nobody has brought this back as a finisher.
When you look at all of the famous super kicks as wrestling evolved into the 90s and modern times, super kick started here with the gentleman Chris Adams. This is where it was popular, how it was popularized in the United States. It's this man right here, gentleman Chris Adams.
And nobody else has been able to replicate it since then. In this case, the original is by far the best. After, as Mark Lawrence says in a depressed voice, by the way.
Boy, there's no mystery of how Mark Lawrence felt as ring announcer for this decision.
No, Mark Lawrence sounded equivalent to Colorado Avalanche play-by-play man Randy Moser, who's incredibly excitable when the Avalanche score a goal, and then when they give up a goal, it could be in triple overtime of the Stanley Cup final, and he will just say, Steven Stamkos scores. Like, that's it. That's all you'll get out of him. Mark Lawrence was Randy Moser here, as he says, in 10.5 minutes, Chris Adams is the American champion.
So, gentleman Chris Adams, besides giving us the super kick, also went on to train Stone Cold Steve Austin and Scott Hall. He would be their trainer as they evolved. And Chris Adams ended up also being another tragic death coming out of world class, as Adams was facing a 20-year prison sentence for manslaughter from the death of a Dallas woman in 2000. She died from a combination of alcohol and GHB, allegedly supplied by Adams, and he was awaiting trial. William Parnell, who was Chris Adams' best friend, was drinking heavily with Chris Adams on October 7th, 2001. Adams lost his temper, was on top of Parnell. Parnell couldn't get him off. Adams went for his eye, and he panicked, reached over, grabbed a .38 caliber handgun, and he hit Adams in the head with it. When that did not stop Chris Adams from attacking him, he shot him in the chest. He immediately called police, turned himself in. Chris Adams was dead at 46 years old. So the curse of the world-class territory continued into the year 2000. So,
yeah, absolutely awful. It's like we said, we've become accustomed to almost being desensitized to going back and watching old wrestling, and so many of the guys you grew up watching having passed away well before before their time. But yeah, world class. It's sadly on a completely different level when it comes to that.
So, favorite thing on this show, and why is it Bill Mercer?
Well, yeah, first, before we get to that, we should talk about the way this show ends. We get back to Bill Mercer in front of the velvet backdrop. He says that in some way he has to admire Gary Hart for always finding a way to get his point across. I liked that. He said that Gary Hart said that with him, gentleman Chris Adams would win championships, and that's exactly what he did, even if we don't like how it happened. Mercer then promos next week's show. We see Earth again, and then the show is over.
So, favorite thing on this show?
Well, there's a few. Chris Adams' super kick.
That was phenomenal.
That was great. I think the most impressive moment of the show. I was so happy to see Kerry and Erick just look great in a match.
He looks so good. We've seen like post his prime Kerry Von Erich a lot.
Yeah, we saw him as Texas Tornado on a couple of those WWF tapes. We saw that supposed to be inspirational, but instead just sad and depressing montage of Kerry Von Erich saying he'd be back by Christmas 1987 to basically save world class. So I was just happy to see really, really good Kerry Von Erich, the Kerry Von Erich I remembered as a kid. Like, I was happy to see that guy did exist at times, and it wasn't just a figment of my imagination and nostalgia like we talked about before. So yeah, I would say those couple things. Gino Hernandez being Gino Hernandez.
Yeah, I liked getting to see an actual Gino Hernandez TV match. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if I had to pick one thing, I would say it was the Chris Adams super kick. I had forgotten, as someone who grew up watching him and watching World Class, and I remembered that he did the super kick, but again, it had been so long since I'd seen him wrestle, since I'd gone back and watched a match of his, I had forgotten just how unique and just beautiful his application of the super kick was.
Yeah, I think I think you hit it. Kerry Von Erich, kind of at his apex here, was fantastic to see, and I enjoyed watching him, and I enjoyed watching the people get to see him. Right, yes. Like the people being so into seeing Kerry Von Erich do not a lot on offense, but great selling for the gentleman, but not doing a ton, but blowing the roof off the dump just with his charisma and just because he's so beloved by the people of Dallas. So
yeah, I agree. And I think that it is sort of in retrospect or changing my pick here. The star of this show, it's the Sportatorium and
sure
the fans. They took a good show and made it feel just electric to watch, just because they were so into everything. Again, the people were more into that Fantastics Rip Oliver Kelly Kaniski match than I think almost anything else we've seen on any episode of season 2 of this podcast. Not even, and that's notwithstanding how crazy they went for Kerry Von Erich and for that match with Chris Adams. Just hearing that 12-minute no contest tag match, people are losing their minds.
Worst thing on the show, speaking of that tag match.
Oof, the finish of that tag match, I don't think there's any other answer. If there is one, and it pains me to say it because, again, Bill Mercer, one of the voices of wrestling for me as a young child, Bobby Gentry.
I was so mad.
That can't happen, and it did for 12 and a half minutes.
Yeah, that was bad. No, the And the Kerry Von Erich Brian Diaz promo was also unairable. I don't know how that was ever shown, but no.
The one thing we should also note is that there were, I guess, unless you want to call Tim Horner one, even though like he was a guy who I think at least had a few wins here or there. This might be the first territory show we watched, particularly a territory show from the 80s, where we didn't really have any defined jobbers on the show. Like this show, we had a big title match. We had a tag team match with guys of note, and then we had a showcase match for one of the big stars in the company, the Texas heavyweight champion, Gino Hernandez. On top of the high-end production compared to other companies, this definitely was a different weekly TV show than the other flagship shows on other territory promotions, and even in the WWF during this time period.
That's a great point, because most TV shows at this point in the 80s were squash matches, and we do love our jobbers. We love when they're untrained. Yes. We love when they have ill-fitting gear, but you had nobody like that on this show at all in a weekly TV show. And we had competitive matches up and down with big stars or upper mid-card stars here.
And the main title in the promotion changed hands. So the other noteworthy thing here is, again, every territory show we've watched, it was all short matches, and mostly squash matches, promos, and then all the promos were just sort of about who guys were feuding with, but they weren't building to any specific match, because all the promos are basically just meant to get you to go see those matches when they come to your local arena, even though they didn't explicitly say that it was coming to your local arena on the show. Whereas here, everything is about what's happening here on this show, what's going to be happening on next week's show. It's just a very, very different setup. In some ways, it felt more like a modern wrestling TV show than it did, like a very good modern wrestling TV show, but more like that. When I say modern, I'm talking like mid to late 90s, like an episode of Nitro than it did, or an episode of Raw than it did like an episode of, Championship Wrestling from Florida or Mid-South or some of the other territories that we've reviewed on this season.
Speaking of this season, it's time to wrap up this podcast, and we're going to call it a season, if you can believe it. Season 2 in the books here. It's a perfect time to remind everybody that you can go back and listen to all of the previous episodes here. If you missed one, you skipped one, now's your chance to catch up. And if you want new content every week, you want to go access an entire back catalog you've never heard, it's all waiting for you. Either hit the subscribe button and in your Apple Podcast for the bonus content, or head on over to the Patreon. It's the same content, just multiple ways to distribute it. You can go to patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. You can sign up there as well and access just hours and hours of content. We have world-class content over there, too. If you want to hear more about Kerry Von Erich, you want to hear another Kerry Von Erich match, there's one waiting for you over there in the Patreon feed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much waiting for you over there. On the free feed, like we said, if you're just getting started, if you're a new listener, there are, I believe, between the two seasons, 67 episodes available for free at wrestlingatrandom.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And then nearly, I believe at this point, 30 episodes additional that you've never heard if you've never subscribed to the paid feed, either at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom or via Apple Podcasts. So take this time during this brief season break to check out everything in the free feed if you're a new listener. Give the paid content a whirl. Support this show, because your support, your subscribing through either of those platforms will help us have a season 3 going forward. Or as you always say, Jeremy, if you can't afford to support the show via paid subscription, we understand that. Help us spread the word. Let your friends know about the show, whether it be in person, when you're getting together and watching wrestling or hanging out, or, just spread the word on social media.
If you go to the Patreon feed right now, episode 22 is waiting for you, where you can go listen to Kerry Von Erich in 1981 challenging the Big Cat Ernie Ladd for this same American Heavyweight Championship that we saw Kerry Von Erich defend on this show here. So that's waiting for you in the Patreon right now. We've also got plenty of other shows. We've got FCW even. We've got the most modern thing we've ever reviewed is waiting for you over there as well. Florida Championship Wrestling, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose from 2011. That's episode 23 over in the bonus content. We've got all kinds of fun stuff. We've got people that they paid to be the randomizer. They were able to pick shows for us, so you can hear us review shows that were chosen by other listeners. So shows you probably love, like the thing we mentioned earlier, the New Japan Super Show. That was Adam's introduction to Japanese pro wrestling, if you can believe it. That's where it all started.
As a 10-year-old, a not quite 10-year-old, when that show aired in April of 1991. That's what got it all started for me in Japanese wrestling, led to the Big Audio Nightmare some 15 years later. So, yeah, we have that in there. Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, Hell in the Cell, 1997. That was a Be the Randomizer listener choice. That's over there.
ECW Heatwave 98 was a listener choice. That's a great one.
Our guy Kelly picked that one. One of the 2 or 3 best ECW pay-per-views, best ECW shows of all time. That's all over there as well. And again, remember, for the free feed, we are going away for a brief moment for a short in-between season hiatus, as we did between season 1 and season 2. But on the paid feed, on the bonus content, those episodes brand new, you've never heard them before, those are going to keep rolling right on. No break over on the paid feed.
No break. We'll see you every single week. Make sure that you're following our social media. That's where we post every single week what episode we're going to review that week. So you can follow us on Twitter at WrestleAtRandom. The same for Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom as well. If you're not on the socials, that's totally fine as well. You can interact with the show via email, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. All the links, the entire back catalog, everything we just described is available at the website, wrestlingatrandom.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a hell of a season. And for people that are on the free feed only, we'll talk to you soon. And for all of you who are subscribing or are going to subscribe on the paid feed, we'll talk to you in a matter of days.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone who supported the show throughout all of these seasons so far. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again next time.